Thank you so much for being here today. It means a lot for us. Basically, I'm Miguel Almeida. I'm part of the Objectivism Portugal group. In conjunction with the Atlas campus, we are organizing these conferences, this one in Porto today, and the one in Lisbon on Thursday. The sponsor of this event is the Ayn Rand Institute. For those of you who don't know, Ayn Rand was a novelist and a philosopher, and she was the author of The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, the masterpiece that it was the first time in writing that she stated all the ideas about objectivism. And the idea for this conference itself here at Porto is to discuss philosophy as a weapon for success. We want to answer the question, how can a principled man achieve personal and professional success whilst being happy? And for that, we're going to count with the help of Yaron Brook, chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute, is the author of Equalism and Fair, Free Market Revolution, and the Pursuit of In Pursuit of Wealth. And he hosts a podcast himself, Yaron Brook Show. So if you like what you hear today, you can listen to his show more often. So thank you very much for being here. Then we have Tim Vieira. Thank you so much as well for being here. He's a highly successful businessman. Now he's very invested and focused on the Brave Generation Academy. The goal of this project is to educate children all around the globe. I think that's amazing. So thank you very much for being here. Thanks for your time. Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
I was leading the longest, because I was the only one. Yeah.
And then we have Mário Amorim Lopes. Mário Amorim Lopes, you all know him as well for sure, is a member of the parliament for Iniciativa Liberal, has a PhD in economics applied to healthcare. He has had companies, or maybe has companies still, and he has his own podcast as well called 𝙒𝙗𝙖𝙥𝙬 𝙧𝙎𝙪𝙘𝙀, so you can check it out if you want. Subscribe, yeah.
And maybe future presidential candidate.
Yeah.
No, please. Don't wish we want the announcement.
I thought we were friends. Yeah.
And to moderate this conference, we have Maria Francisca Vasconcelos. She has a master's in law. She is the vice president of 𝙒𝙬𝙧 𝙎𝙪𝙘𝙀, and she's a parliament assistant at the European Parliament. So thank you very much for being here with us as well.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. And the floor is yours, Maria. Thank you.
No, yes, I have mine. So, let's get it started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our debate, Philosophy as a Weapon for Success. It's a pleasure to have you all here this afternoon for what I believe will be a very inspiring and interesting conversation about how philosophy can shape our views on the world and our lives. Our speakers come from very different and interesting backgrounds, from business, politics and philosophy, which I'm sure will make this exchange even more engaging for everyone. And with that, I would like to start with Yaron, and let's start with the basics, I believe. So what is philosophy, and why should anyone care about it for their lives?
So philosophy is really this study. I mean, the volume seems high. Philosophy is the study of the fundamental aspects of life. It studies questions like, what is reality? How do we know what reality is? And what are we? What is mankind? What kind of an animal are we? And what is our purpose in life? What should be our purpose in life? So it's descriptive in its metaphysics and epistemology about what is out there, how we know, and then it's prescriptive in a sense of, well, what kind of life should you lead? What kind of values and what kind of virtues should you engage in? And of course that leads to kind of political philosophy, which then tells us, well, what kind of political systems are good, what kind of political systems are bad, what's good, what's evil in terms of politics, not just in terms of human behavior. And it even addresses kind of the human need for aesthetics, for art, and there's a whole field in philosophy that deals with aesthetics, which we probably won't talk about today. And it's important because at the end of the day, it shapes everything. Even people who've never read philosophy and don't know anything about philosophy and would deny they've been exposed to any philosophy are guided by a philosophy implicitly. They absorb it from their parents, from their teachers, from their professors. If you ask them, what is reality? They have an answer. They might have never thought about it. They've just absorbed it. If you ask them, how do you know? They've got an answer. Again, they might not have thought about it, but they've got an answer because they've absorbed it from the culture around them. And certainly we know everybody out there has opinions about politics. And how many of them have really thought it through and really established their foundations and thought about what are their foundations in political philosophy and why they hold those foundations, and this is the kind of system of government, and therefore, we should have socialized healthcare, or we should have private healthcare, but they have reasons. Most people don't have reasons because they've never thought about it. So philosophy is that system of thought behind it all that shapes every aspect of human behavior. Everything that we do is ultimately shaped by a philosophy. And one of the things that I think is really important in life, and I think that hopefully this panel will help, is the more we make philosophy explicit, the more we identify a philosophical premise, the more it can become a tool for us to live a better life. The more we know about ourselves, we know about why we do and why we think what we think, and the more we can then shape our lives to be consistent with the fundamental ideas that we have. The more it's a mishmash and just in the background, the more we're being pulled by forces that we are not in control of.
Before moving on to Tim, I would like to just make a little follow-up question. Based on what you just told us, would you say that philosophy can work like as a practical guide to our lives and moving through the world?
Definitely. I mean, philosophy should, and I think philosophers who present their philosophy are intended to be a practical guide for people to live by. Even philosophies that I think are bad, their intention is for people to take them seriously and to live or die, if they're really bad philosophies, based on them. Philosophy is a practical guide to living, and a good philosophy is a practical guide to successful living. It's a practical guide to happiness, to prosperity, to flourishing as a human being. That's the purpose of philosophy, to teach us, look, living is hard. It's complicated. There's a lot of going on, right? And most of us are focused on making a living, raising our kids. There's so much going on. And what philosophy and learning basic philosophy gives us are tools, principles, by which we can live shortcuts so we can achieve happiness and flourishing without having to invent our own philosophy ourselves or to think every little aspect through. That is the job of philosophers and intellectuals. It's to convey these ideas and to help us use the ideas in our daily lives.
Thank you so much. So moving on to Tim. Tim, you have often said that success is about trying, failing, and then trying again. And with that said, I would like to ask you, for you personally, what does success means?
Yeah, so that's always difficult because I got presented as a successful businessman. And I can tell you, I've had many more insuccesses, many more failures than I have successes. But without those successes or failures, there would be very few successes because you need this experience. You need to go through all the failures. You need to learn how to get back up, how to rebuild a team, how to take responsibility and say, yeah, my fault, move on, let's go. So I think, in the way I see success in the end is us working on things that give us purpose with people we love or enjoy or can tolerate. Okay. If you're forced to work with people you don't like, on projects that you don't like, well, that's very unsuccessful, even if you're making a lot of money. Because in the end, I've understood that success also doesn't come with money. There's a lot of people making money. They're super unsuccessful, not that happy. Like everything I do in life, I look at it almost and keep it simple. So if you're doing things and it's making you happy and you're in a good space, working with people you really enjoy, I think that's what makes me happiest, you know. So I get to wake up every day. I don't have a day set. I don't exactly know what's going to happen. I get to go to bed super late and wake up super early because I've got this purpose and I'm working with people that I believe in. So that's success for me. Yeah.
That's a very good answer, actually, and it makes life a lot easier while working, for sure. So, still on this success topic, I would like to move on to Mario, and I would like to ask if you think that success can be collective, like shared by a company or a nation, or if success always has to be an individual achievement.
Okay, so first of all, let me start with the bottom line of my message, which is that philosophy is not a means to an end, be it achieving personal success, professional success, whatever. It is an end in itself. So it serves its own purpose. Having said this, philosophy is also an important tool, and by the way, I'm no philosopher, I'm just a layman that uses philosophy to improve his life and the way I see life. I think that is the most important point. And philosophy, therefore, having said that, it is an end in itself, can be a very useful tool for understanding the world and thinking about the world. Let me give you an example. So picking up on what Yaron said, which I completely agree, we are influenced by philosophers all the time. Not only philosophers, it was Keynes that used to say that everybody is influenced by a defunct economist. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree to it or not, you are influenced by that. The same with philosophy. So if that is the case, we need to decide whether we want to do it consciously or unconsciously, because either way we'll get influenced by it. So it's better we know the tools, we know the tools of the trade, we know the most basics, so that help us with our own life. And let me give you one good example of how philosophy can help us with ethical issues and with moral dilemmas. Most of us will have an opinion on what I have to show you in a quick sec, just waiting for the display turn on. So everybody will have a hunch. We'll have an instinct on how it would behave if confronted with what I'll be showing you next. But the real question is, can you do it from a rational standpoint? Can you decide knowing everything that is at stake and the different ethical perspectives you can take? Well, it's powering up, but while it's powering up, I can explain in words the moral dilemma. So it's basically, some of you have heard it in the past, it's called the trolley dilemma. It's basically a railway, right? You have a railway, and then you have a bridge on top. On the railway, still turning on the railway, you see a couple of people that is tied to the railway, right? We don't know who those are. We don't know if they're innocent, if they're guilty of anything. See, there you go. So there's the bridge. There's the railway, and then there's some people there, right? They're tied to the railway. And there's a train incoming. And there's nothing you can do. I mean, if the train just steps over them, they will be, of course, be dead. That's for sure. Now, on top of the bridge, there's a very fat guy. And there are some wanderers there. And they are discussing between each other what they should do about it. Whether they should throw the fat guy off the bridge, and in this moral dilemma, he can stop the train, he dies, but the others survive. While others are saying, no, I mean, he's an innocent guy, why should we do that? While the others are saying, well, we can save more people. Now, you may think this is kind of an abstract academic example. It is not. These are the kind of decisions that one needs to do on, well, in the particular case of physicians, for instance, that they need to make on a daily basis. Now, if I ask the audience what your decision would be, usually it's split, half and half. Some would say, well, we could save more people. We call that utilitarianism. I'll discuss that in detail. You would save more people, while others say, well, the ends do not justify the means. So even if we save more people, I don't want to sacrifice an innocent. We could call that a deontological approach, a Kantian approach. Either way, you will have this answer instinctively, right? You haven't thought about it, but you'll take one of these sides. That's it. If you have to decide, you'll take one of these sides. Now, it's interesting because when I asked these, and I did ask this in the past to an audience of physicians or people working in the healthcare sector, way more people would go for the utilitarian ethical decision than the ontological. And there's good reason for that, because health professionals have a strong pressure to save as many people as possible, right? That's their duty. They need to do that. So they are lean towards doing that, saving as many people as possible, while others will say, or will take a different approach. In my particular case, I'll definitely take a deontological approach. I don't think the ends justify all means. Actually, this idea of, it's called consequentialism, is the path to totalitarianism. So there's some philosophical roots to the idea of an oppressive state that will liberate us all, and therefore some eggs need to be broken, like Lenin said. There's a philosophical root in this thought. And so these things actually happen to affect us in our daily decisions. And so there's no right or wrong to this moral dilemma. There's no right answer. Those who say that I would rather save more people, they are not wrong. And those who say that, well, let's have it as it is, and let's not sacrifice the guy, and then more people will eventually die. Now, where this dilemma gets trickier is when you start changing it. And for those who say, well, I wouldn't sacrifice the fat guy on the bridge, and then you change the dilemma a bit and say the following: what if, instead of those individuals that we don't know who they are, it was your family? Most of you would probably change your answer. And that's one of the reasons why we're not good judges when we're judging for our own cause. That's precisely because of that, because we wouldn't be impartial. It would be too much at stake. We wouldn't sacrifice our family. Well, I wouldn't for sure. And so, again, this has a big impact on us. So this is just a small illustration of how philosophy can have a big impact on how we reason about the problems we face in our life and the principles we want to follow. And for someone like me, who is, as most of you probably know, very liberal and staunch liberal, I like my positions of principle to be grounded in something or in values that are really important to me. And therefore, that's why I take this deontological approach, or Kantian approach, because it derives from the moral imperative of Immanuel Kant, that the means the end does not justify all the means, and you wouldn't do unto others what you wouldn't want them to do to yourself. So you wouldn't sacrifice an innocent. And that somehow gives me some rest. And just to wrap up, that somehow gives me some peace of mind, in the sense that I don't know if the answer is right or wrong, but I'm okay with the way I decided. So I haven't answered exactly how philosophy helps with success and how to measure success, but I think this was one of the angles I wanted to share with the audience.
Having heard Mario, I would like to make a little follow-up question to Yaron, knowing your views on, can success be collective, or is it necessarily individual?
Which he didn't answer.
I'll get back to it later.
Yeah, he's a politician, that's right, I forgot. Can I comment on what he did say, though, before we get to that?
Yes, of course.
Because I think Ayn Rand has an interesting perspective on the trolley question. This is a standard issue that is taught in all ethics classes. You know, variety of different ways it's presented. I've never seen this caricature.
It's from The Economist.
Okay, but that's kind of a you know, pushing the fat guy, and he's fat. You know, so I don't know if that weighs into the decision, but.
Well, actually, sorry to interrupt you, but some physicians said, well, that guy is very likely to live not as long as others.
I thought of it.
You know, healthy people. So eventually, it wouldn't be that bad.
So
yeah, I had someone saying that.
So Rand very much viewed this as the kind of, as a, if you will, a marginal issue in ethics. So very different than I'd say what's usually taught in ethics classes. She thought this was the ethics of emergencies, right? That sometimes you're faced with these really, impossible dilemmas, and there's no real good answer. There's no real right answer. And what she argued is that unfortunately this is what almost all of ethics in our modern time boils down to. It's about emergencies. And her argument is no. Ethics is about every single decision, important decision you make in your daily life. It's how do I decide what career to pursue? Do I listen to my mother and do something I hate because it pleases her? Or do I do what I'm passionate about? That's an ethical decision. Am I placing the interest of my mother ahead of mine? Or am I placing my interest first? Every single day we engage in ethical decisions. Every time we decide, am I going to really think about this problem, or am I going to go by my emotions? Right? Those are two different philosophical schools, emotionalism versus reason. So ethics is something that I think guides every one of our decisions. And yes, you're sometimes faced in an emergency room in a hospital with these impossible situations. Do I treat these people? Do I treat those people? How do I decide? And for doctors, maybe that's a reality. But for most of us, we're never going to be in a trolley. Most of us, though, have to make decisions every single day about how to use our mind, how to use our life, how to use our time, how to make decisions. And a good, useful ethical system is one that gives us guidance on how to make those decisions in a way that leads to success and happiness. Now the question was about individual versus collective happiness. Success. So there's a sense in which only individuals act in the world. Groups act, but groups are just collections of individuals. But you can attribute the success of a group of people to the group. Certainly companies can be successful, and you can also say that countries are successful. But you have to then break it down. What makes a country successful? The success of its individual people. I mean, this is part of the problem with authoritarians, right? They want the country to be successful somehow. They imagine it can be successful, while none of the individuals are successful. They're all the same. They're all, mindless drones doing, like in the kind of communist caricature. So a group success is dependent on individual success, but certainly, sports teams, right? I don't know any football teams in Portugal, I'm sorry. But like Real Madrid is successful, it's a team. Now, it can only be successful to the extent the individuals are successful and that they work together as a team, but you can't not say that the group is successful. So yes, groups can be successful.
Okay, that's very interesting. Moving on to Tim, and still on this success topic, but connecting it to happiness. The question is, how can we connect happiness to success? And is it possible that you are a very successful person and that you can still be unhappy even though you have reached all your goals?
Yeah, I think happiness is actually a lot more simple than we think, and is not as complex as we all think. And not being a philosopher, I try to be very simple thinking. And I've just learned that, giving gratitude, traveling and seeing what could be if I didn't have the opportunities I did have, makes me super happy. Having a cause makes me super happy, even if I'm losing, but I've got the cause, so I feel like I'm doing my part. Making the right decision when it's maybe not the easy decision or the expected decision or the allowed decision, I looked at, you look at Nelson Mandela. Was he happy in jail? Probably not happy in jail per se physically, but mentally, spiritually, he was probably very happy because he was fighting for a vote that he believed in and he had a cause, So I look at that and I say, if we think of it in that way, I'd rather have those causes and have a war to fight that I believe in, than being comfortable, living a long life, and not having achieved anything or fought for anything. you don't become an example. You don't become a mentor. You don't become anything, you know. And I think that's a lot sadder than, you know, being grateful for what you've got, because you've got. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's actually not nice if it's easy. I've actually felt that. The wars I've had and the battles that I've fought that have made me the strongest. You know, I always tell my kids, you know, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. And I really believe that. You know, and then it also works on everything. It gives you more faith and more hope. You know, those things that if you believe in God or you don't believe in God, but if you've got them, it does give you a lot of strength. And this, I might be now totally off the philosophers and all that, but it is what it is for me, you know, and that's it. So I would say is identifying the little things, being grateful for the little things, and fighting something that is worth fighting for, that makes you be happy, you know.
This view that you just shared with us is actually very important, because soon we will also move on to the values and the role of religion, that I believe is actually very connected to what you have shared. But before that, I would like to ask Mario, if our happiness depends on the choices we make, does that mean that we should all be doing similar choices and maybe aiming for similar goals?
Well, before I try answering that, let me just go back to your previous question, which I didn't answer, about whether success is individual or collective, because there is a much broader question beyond that, which is whether it's the eternal dilemma of agency and structure. It's more a sociological question than a philosophical question, which is basically what matters the most. Is the agency of the individuals, or is it the structure, in this case the structure of society, that somehow will limit the potential of the benefit of the individual, or the other way around, will boost the potential of the individual? And this has strong implications also for political philosophy. When we think about one of the intellectual fathers of the left, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, used to say that individuals, by nature, were good beings. However, society would degrade us, right? So it was structure affecting the individuals. Thomas Hobbes, on the other hand, used to say that we are savages. If we are left to our natural state, we're savages, and therefore we need a strong state called the Leviathan. He called it the Leviathan, so that it could tame us. It could somehow limit our state of savage. And so this has important implications for our day-to-day decisions, and also for our collective decisions. So it's hard to say. I mean, it's of course pragmatic answer. It's of course a mix of things. You by yourself, your agency is not enough to accomplish everything you'd like. Think about Einstein. If Einstein were born not in Switzerland, and were born somewhere in Africa, right, in sub-Saharan Africa, which doesn't have the resources, they don't even have enough food, he'd probably be dead when he was like 10 or 15. He'll never become the Einstein, the physician, the physics we know, right? Because he wouldn't have the opportunities he had when he moved to the US. So of course, structure matters. We also benefit from the interactions we have to society. Now, the important point being, we want those interactions to be forced or voluntary. Now, a libertarian, a liberal would say, of course, voluntary. We are individuals, but we're not hermits. We don't live isolated from society. We like society. We like to cooperate with each other. What we don't like is the state telling us with whom we should cooperate and what we should do. So, I mean, bottom line answer would be, it's a mix of both, right? I mean, there's a lot that depends on your effort, on what you do, on, you know, all the trouble, all the effort you put into it. But then there are other factors that you don't control, that are pretty much related to the environment, to the context you're in, to the society you live. So I'd say it's a mix of both. And in the meanwhile, I completely forgot the new questions you asked.
If happiness depends on our choices, should we all be aiming for the same, like the same goals, making the same choices, same path?
I mean, I would call myself an hedonist. So, I mean, do whatever works to make you happy. That's it, right? I mean, each one of us has to find its recipe. There's no universal recipe for happiness. For some people, it's going to be work their arses off. Sorry for the language. I mean, work a lot, achieve a lot in terms of, you know, professionally, build a big successful company, make a lot of money. That's probably what will make them happy. For others will be raise a family, see your kids grow, get old with them, or travel a lot. I mean, each one of us, I would say, needs to find their own way, their own path to happiness. But the way we think about it, I think it helps finding that way. If we don't put too much pressure on it, if we just accept it as it is, that we need to, you know, walk the path, find our way, and eventually we'll uncover what truly makes us happy, I think it will be much easier to take that path than if we just try to doing it blindfolded without knowing where we want to go.
But I do think by making decisions different to other people, we get happier. Different, like
for
we
some
don't
people,
follow.
for
I
some
think
individuals,
I think
yes.
if you do many times doing something different to others, you actually become happier. You know, and the other thing is, I do think you have more fun when you're with others. When I sometimes think you have a lot more fun when you're with others. Like I've never, you know,
being the contrarian.
I've had a lot of. Fun with others.
Yeah, so fun and happiness not the same.
No.
I know a lot of
so
fun that makes you very unhappy.
But in the
when you wake up the next morning.
But in the end, it produces joy. You know, like my daughter, my son.
Yeah,
you know, so it's better. It's okay. And alone, that joy would have never come into my life. I hope you're listening.
But I'd say everybody has their own path. There's no question, and everybody must choose their own way. But there are certain principles that lead you to happiness and certain principles that lead you to unhappiness. I mean, there's a lot of unhappy people in the world. And we have to have an answer to why there's so many unhappy people. Not, they've made choices, they've followed paths that don't lead anywhere. So there's a methodology to happiness. There is a framework that leads to happiness, even if the specific individual choices that one makes are going to be different, because we're going to do different careers and marry different people, hopefully. And we like different cars, and we like different arts, and we like different things. They all have to be life-affirming values. We can choose different values, but they all have to have one thing in common. If you choose life-destroying values, which unfortunately many people do, they're life-destroying, and you're not going to be happy. You're going to commit spiritual suicide, in a sense.
That's a very objectivist point of view.
I strive towards that. Yes.
Moving on to a topic that is, like I said before, connected to religion. If you don't mind, I would switch up a bit the order of the questions, because I know the three of you have a very different view on this. So I would like to start with Tim. You showed us with your prior answers that you are very much guided and connected to faith. And so I would like to ask you, how does Christian principles shape our happiness, our sense of happiness?
Yeah, I think, Christian values keep you maybe doing the right choices in many ways, because, like for me, being God-fearing helps me. I'm not embarrassed to say it. I've been in dark positions, and maybe my faith was the light that kept me going, and maybe kept me believing that it'll come out of that. You understand? And I've got friends and people I know that don't have that faith, and when it's dark, it's dark. And it can even get darker and stay dark for a very long time. I think hope comes from faith. And if you don't have hope, and when, the saddest place that I've seen in the world has been East Vancouver. When I walked through the roads of East Vancouver, I was shocked, because it was like there was no hope. The guys that were stuck on drugs and all that on the side of the road, there was no hope. And I go to Africa and, Congos and wherever I go, and there's still hope. There's always hope. And they're happier because there's hope. So for me, it's a simple thing. I don't have to be a philosopher to understand that it helps me. So maybe, I'm being selfish, saying that it works for me, that's the way I'll think about it. And sometimes when someone's trying to convince me not, I I don't have to be convinced. I move on, and I don't think too much about it, you know. In that picture that was there, maybe I would tell them, you know, you got to pray about it. Whatever happens to the train happens. And it's not my, you know, it's what I'm trying to say, yeah, is that I'm realistic, but I also know what strengthens me, what gives me strength. And I think, you know, we are in a world that there's a lot more mental wellness issues. There's a lot more people off the ethics and values, etc. And I think the whole world was blossoming, and many countries were blossoming when there was Judaism and Christian values. Let's call it just the values. Don't even worry about all the rest. And it gets a bit more complicated when they're not there. And we do like influence our neighbor, and we do you know, we believe we know everything about him. When you know, there's a few rules there that were good. So that's the way I see it. You know.
Before, you have talked about having a cause, having a purpose, and how it moves you. Do you think that is because of altruism? Is altruism what moves you and also gives you a sense of happiness? Does altruism have a part on this?
You know, like if I was sitting here when I was 40, I'd be different to today. Now that I've got grey hair and all that, you start thinking about what do I give back? What makes me happy now is, yes, looking at do I leave the place a better place, you know? And that's what I work for. It doesn't make me much happier now getting a new Ferrari. It doesn't change anything in my life. I don't have to prove any of that anymore. It actually makes me feel probably worse now if I did that. You understand? It's crazy, but when I was younger, it was a good thing, and it motivated me. And you know, I always say you go through 3 phases in life. You go through the need, and you need some stuff. You need food, you need accommodation, you need a job, and then you go through greed, where you think you need a lot more than you really need, you know, and you get and get and get, and you compete with everybody, and that's how you see yourself successful. And then if you're lucky enough, and some people get there, it's freed, where you actually understand less is more. You're not competing with anyone. Do what you can, you know, like if you got the financial freedom, you can do what you like and live a life, you know, that's your path, you understand? So I think we forget that, you know, that sometimes in life we're also hitting different places, and we want everyone to be the same as us when they're 20, 30, 40. Maybe they won't be, you know, they're still going through it. And some people will maybe stay greed until they're 85 or 90, 100. There's nothing you're going to do about it. But for me, I think I do stuff now to, you know, like leave this place better. I think that's it. I want to be an example for my kids. You know, I always tell them, like, if you Google me and there's shitty news, I'm going to really be sad. So I'm going to try my best not to have shitty news. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you. And moving on to Mário, you have also mentioned before the importance that religious values have in our society. And so I would like to ask you, not today, but yes, I would like to ask you, what role do you think these values play on shaping Western ethics?
A lot. That's the straight answer, a lot. I mean, that's another example of something that deeply influences us, whether we like it or not. Because the Western society, like it or not, is built on Jewish Christian values. That's the way it is. We may not agree with all those values, but it's definitely built on top of that. And so whether you accept it or not, it will influence. It's a structure that exists that will influence what you are, what you achieve, and the way you think about it, right? Which doesn't mean you cannot renounce from those values. A lot of people do so on purpose, right? And they want to, you know, somehow cut the ties, cut any bonds that exist with all the heritage, the philosophical heritage, the religious heritage that we have in the Western society. It's interesting because the people that usually do that, they tend to praise other societies that are way more religious than we are. It's a paradox, but they are the ones that need to respond to that. Having said this, in my particular case, I think I've never shared this in public, but I'm an agnostic. I'm not a religious person right now. I used to be. I was raised a Catholic. I used to go to the church by myself a lot of times, alone, by myself. And I read the whole Bible. And then I started parting ways with Catholicism. And the idea that there's an entity here on earth, the church that knows how to interpret God. That kind of repulsed me. And when I lived in the US, I took the chance of visiting some Protestant churches. So I would visit all the Protestant churches, from Methodists to Puritans. I went to a couple of them because there's this, the more direct link between, in this particular case, Jesus and the person than through Catholicism, right? Which is like an entity that stands there in the middle, which has the authority to interpret what is the will of God. And I did so, and I was closer to Christianity than Catholicism, but still, there was still too many people in the middle, too many humans trying to interpret whatever God meant us to be. And so, I mean, again, I parted ways.
You can pray directly, eh?
No, I know. But the thing is, in the end, I don't know whether God exists or not, right? I just somehow cut the middleman, the idea of churches. I still don't know. I'm not an atheist, because an atheist is a very zealot and religious person. It's someone that strongly believes that God does not exist. And I cannot say that with such certainty. But as an agnostic, I can say, I don't know. We don't know. And so I honestly don't know whether God exists or not. I do understand those who need God in their lives. I think it is somehow a very important support in someone's lives. I can understand that, especially those who have to go through harsh times, through grief. It can be really, I mean, somehow a big support to someone's life. I totally understand that. Somehow I wouldn't mind having a clearer vision that it exists, but so far that's the way it is. But I do acknowledge that our whole society is based on those Christian values, so we owe a lot to that. Of course, it was not all good things. A lot of bad things happened in the past, but that due to religion as well, which is another reason why I parted ways with religion and with the human interpretation of what would be the will of an existing God, of a deity. So yeah, that's basically it.
This is a very small observation, but for what is worth, the fact that you actually don't know if God exists or not is actually part of faith, because faith has to live like hand in hand with doubt always. You can never be sure, and that's why you believe and you keep going and you hope for the best.
But it's also faith, it's also faith to have a dogma without being it rational, but it's the dogma that God exists. It's going beyond the reason and accepting that it exists, right? That's also faith.
Yes.
I think.
No, it is, definitely. So, Yaron, I know you defend something very different from what we have just discussed. And with that being said, can you tell us about rational egoism and your beliefs on this?
Sure. I mean, so I agree that just on the faith issue, I agree that Western civilization is very much influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition, if we want to call it that. I'm just not sure it's influenced for the better by that tradition. I suspect it's influenced for the worse and not for the better. I think a lot of the ills that we have in our societies today are products of that. And if I could pick up on something Tim said, which I get upset every time I hear it.
Good. There's lots of debate.
No, I know, absolutely. You're a very successful businessman. You've done very well. And I don't know much about you, but I suspect you did it by creating stuff, by building companies, by building products, by serving your customers, by doing all this. You never took anything. Why do you say you want to give back? Right? Giving back assumes in the language that you took something, but you didn't take anything. You've created. You've created jobs. You've created wealth for people. You provided people with immense products and values and good things. I'm not saying don't do good. You know, I think your business did good. I think every businessman I know somehow feels guilty for the fact that they did a business and they want to give back, but you shouldn't feel guilty. You're a hero for being a businessman. You're moral for being a businessman. You created something. You built something. You added to the world. The world is a better place for you being in it, even if you don't, quote, give back anything. So I think it's tragic. I think this idea that we have in our Judeo-Christian tradition, and I think it's very much from there, that somehow if I benefit from making the world a better place, that's tainted. Profit is tainted. Making money is tainted. And if I have to repent in some way later in life, maybe. And I think that attitude is completely wrong.
No, but I can reassure you that it's totally selfish of me giving back, because it makes me feel
back. You're
it
giving.
it's
but you're
giving
not back.
mine exactly. Like it's my
It's a
it's
semantical
my
question.
selfish of giving makes me feel amazing.
Yep.
Do you
I-
understand what I'm saying? So
I
it's back
believe
to
you.
my selfishness,
Yep.
and at the same time, it's like I've enjoyed more giving than getting. It's weird. It's actually weird. Like getting back
Yep.
felt like work. Giving feels like pleasure.
But didn't you enjoy your work?
You know, I enjoyed it. It was a different time of my life.
Yeah.
But if I had to do it all over again, I'm enjoying the giving a lot more. And again, and I get to choose who I give it to, and who deserves it, and who I don't think deserves it, and all those kinds of things. So it's selfish again, you know, in a way. But for me, it's an amazing thing. I wouldn't think of it the other way. I told my kids when I started giving with Brave Generation Academy, I told them, listen, do you want me to leave you an inheritance, or can I have fun? Okay. And that's
And then
it.
they,
It's
of course,
gone with
said
the
you can
fun.
have fun
It's
then.
gone fun. They might have made a mistake, but you know what? I told them it's probably going to help you, because you'll probably
It'll
not
be
get
good
the
for
wrong
them.
friends.
Be good for
You're
them.
probably going to marry a better person. You're probably going to enjoy building,
Yep.
like you said, and getting all that
Yeah.
back. And I'm not going to take that away from you, because you're going to need to do it. So in
And
the
it's
end,
fun to do it.
it is.
It's
It is fun.
incredibly
That's what I'm
valuable to
saying. It's
build.
different
Yeah.
times,
To build.
you know, different strokes.
So you asked about rational egoism or rational self-interest. So Rand's view of morality is that it should be a guide to living a good life for yourself. That you know, the purpose of morality is not to learn how to sacrifice. It's not to learn how to you know, place other people's well-being above your own. It's to figure out how to live the best life that you can live for you. And you know, the conclusion she comes to is, if you want to do that, in order to live the best life for yourself, reason and rationality are the tool you're going to use. And the reason for that is it's how we get all our values. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we have to think. You have to use your mind. You have to figure it out to solve problems and to figure out what works and what doesn't. You know, trial and error, but you have to learn from,
Yeah.
you know, I know people who fail and never succeed, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't learn from their errors. You have to constantly think, you have to constantly learn, you have to constantly study. And you should approach your own life that way. That is, you should constantly think about, you know, how can I make myself better? How can I make my character better? How can I attain, you know, values that'll lead to greater flourishing and greater success? And that all requires reason. At the end of the day, man is a rational animal. That's how Aristotle defined it, and I think he was absolutely right. We survive by using our reason, by using our rationality. And that is what's required in order to survive. And her morality is a morality built around this concept of each one of us should strive to make our life the best life that it can be. It doesn't mean treating other people badly, quite the contrary. It doesn't mean exploiting other people. No, I mean, that it doesn't mean lying, cheating, and stealing. All of that actually leads to a worse life. A good life is about being rational, which means being honest, which means being productive, which means building and creating and making stuff. You know, it's very counter, I think, to, again, a traditional Judeo-Christian morality, which is about sacrifice, which is about placing the interests of other people above your own, which is about, if you feel good about helping somebody, maybe you're not doing it for the right reason, and maybe it's not moral, right? Which is something Kant would say.
No, it's religion is bringing that a lot. I think religion, and that's why when you're talking about the Catholicism and all that, it brings on that you have to sacrifice.
Yes.
But in the Bible, it actually says use your talents, and God got upset when you didn't make money with the talents He gave you. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not about He wants you to be poor, doesn't want you to use your talents, etc. But religion changes a lot. You know, we have religion in Christianity. There's 3,000 ways of seeing it.
Well, that's the
So
thing about
that's
the
why,
Bible.
for me, I don't need the 3,000 ways. I see it my way. I see it directly. I don't need to speak via a whole lot of people or pray to a lot of people. Yeah, I can go direct. It's okay. It's good. And it keeps my values good. It gives me, do you understand? So it also, I saw it in my kids. And that, when I knew there's got to be a God, when they were born and I saw that and some of the stuff they do and all that, I don't have the question anymore. There's got to be something. But I'm not here to convert anyone.
Yeah.
But for me, it works. So good, you know?
So I became an atheist when I was 6.
No.
And literally when I was 6. Going to a very religious day school where they were teaching the Bible and teaching all this stuff. And I came to the conclusion none of it made any sense. It was all a nice story, just like we tell stories. And they could prove none of it. And they could show me no evidence of its existence. And I've had kids. I've gone through that process, and it's never shaken my atheism. And atheism, I don't think is a dogma. It's something doesn't exist. That's all.
But that's
it's not a positive. It's a negative.
And
It
that's
just
what's
says
good
nothing
about
exists.
Christianity. It's your choice. Like, we don't force it on you, and we don't tax you
Well,
more.
some-
We don't make you
Some
a slave.
Christians don't force it on you.
Well, I'm talking about.
If you study the history.
No, but look on in the Bible. It's your choice. No one's going to force it. Religion might force it on, but not in the Bible. It's your choice. Different to other books where it's not your choice. If you don't do it, you get taxed, or if you don't do it, you get killed. And it's your choice. You know. I hope I see you in heaven. But if not, it was your choice.
Probably not. Either way.
Probably
I
not. So he knows it's
probably
there.
not either way.
That actually reminded me of one of they were friends in the beginning, but then they somehow parted ways. Rothbard and Ayn Rand, right? She had some kerfuffles with him, but in one of his books, he has an amazing books about economic thought and history, and the first experience of communist experience that is known, at least that we have some evidence about, was done by a Protestant faction, the Anabaptists,
Absolutely.
in the north of Germany. I think it was in the north of what we now call Germany. And it was a kind of a commune, right? And had the same, this was way before Marx, right? And it had the same logic that, you know, you wanted to get rid of the idea of a family, and so the children would be brought by the entire community.
Kibbutz.
Everything, like a kibbutz in Israel. So everything would be shared. There would be no private property, open rooms, right? And as you can imagine, it went really well. But it's interesting because the foundation for that idea, this had a religious root. Right? In this case, a Christian Protestant
It
root.
goes even earlier. It's actually, you see the first communes under Catholicism in very early on in Christian history. You see the existence of communes. So yes, the idea of socialism and communism has roots. And one of the things about the Bible is you can pretty much read what you want into it. It's written in such a way that, you know, I know socialists who read the Bible and swear that it's all, you know, Sermon on the Mount is pure communism and socialism. And I know capitalists, Christians who read the same passages and say, no, see, this is all capitalist. And I think to a large extent, we used to study the Old Testament in school. And we used to study a few sentences, right, a few passages, and then 50 rabbis commenting on those. And all 50 rabbis disagreed with one another about what the passage meant. Yeah. And it takes.
That's the reason you can never read a verse. You got to read a few verses.
Yeah,
You go per verse.
But then you have to read
It's
50
the same
commentaries.
it's the same as now with Trump. Whatever he says, they then take it away and bring the other bits at the end. You got to listen to the whole thing.
And actually, that reminded me, that I do have some socialist friends that are Catholic, and they swear by God that Jesus was socialist.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before we get lost into politics as well, I would like to ask you the same question that guides us to our last topic today, that is about the principled man. And the three of you have shared your perspectives on happiness, success, ethics, even religion. And I would like to ask you, for your perspective on the following question. Can a man without principles be ever truly happy or successful, from your point of view? And we can start with
Sure.
Yaron.
No, I don't think you can be happy without principles. I think you've got to live by something. To live minute by minute and change your mind and go in different directions, and without guidance, without clear guidance. Now, you have to have the right principles. That is, the wrong principles are going to lead you down a bad road. And there have been monsters in history who are very principled, but they were monsters, and therefore they lived horrible lives. But I think that people who don't have principles, people who are constantly shifting and they lie one day and they tell the truth another day because there's no principle of tell the truth, cannot be happy. They cannot really be successful. Now, they can be, there's one, and I apologize in advance for this, there's one profession in which you get rewarded for being unprincipled.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Only one. You can't do it in business.
No.
You get washed out, and that one profession is politics. And the prime example of that is in the White House right now. You've got somebody who's completely unprincipled, who has achieved the pinnacle of success in politics. So that is the one area in life where it gains you success. I don't think happiness. I don't think he's happy, but I think it gains you success. But that's the only really realm in life where it works that way.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you won't. And I think even having strong principles, even when they're against the current, at least people know what you are, and they will start to respect it. But if you swap and change, it's actually the worst, spineless person. And in business, I prefer not to deal with that. I prefer to know what you're dealing with, what they stand by. And that's what makes me sad nowadays. The handshake used to mean something.
Yep.
And you knew the principles and whose hand you were shaking, Now it means, it's what contract, what this, what that, and how do you get out of it, etc. And and I think going forward, we're going to need a world with principles. I think those are going to be the most advantageous assets you'll get. Will be if you got ethics and values and principles, and we don't teach that. We don't talk about it. And before we were lucky because we had parents who would give us experiences and try to do that. We had grandparents who would give us values and ethics and tell us stories about what happened if you did lie. The wolf wouldn't, no one would help you if the wolf came, all those kinds of things. And we're losing all those things. And when we had community, that we also, if we were a liar, you'd stop getting credit, or you would stop, you would get out of that community and you'd be sad. Now, it's more important, our comments on social media. It's how do we get onto the bandwagon that's right and it's going to that's got less people that oppose it because they don't want to say anything because it's just going to be like they don't want to be attacked. They're too busy. They're working. Do you understand? So I think it is like you got to have principles. I think, and that's going to become a value. That's going to become currency. No.
My turn. Well, I think we need to define our terms so we can answer that. What is happiness? I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yaron, from Ayn Rand's perspective and yours as well, happiness is a rational achievement, right? It is not an emotional achievement. It's not a chemical chemistry happening in our body releasing hormones that make us happy. Now, from that point of view, I fully agree that you need to stand principle and believe according to what, or actually live your life according to what you truly believe as a way to achieve this, I wouldn't say exactly happiness, perhaps accomplishment, right? That you want your life to be meaningful. You want to make sure that you lived according to your principles and you lived for the sake of yourself and not for anyone else's sake, as it is written in Atlas Shrugged and in many other pieces of Ayn Rand. So if you define happiness this way, I think it makes perfect sense. I see happiness also, not that I discard this view, I think it makes sense, but from another perspective as well, as a more hedonist perspective. That also includes emotions. It also includes all the chemical reactions that happen in our body. And so you can, without significant achievements in your life, actually be happy. You don't need much to be happy. I learned that through my own experience. When I was traveling around the world for a year with only my backpack. So I didn't have much money on my own. I don't know, I lost count of how many times I ate spaghetti with the tuna fish. So I was living on a budget. I didn't have much time, and I was really, really happy. Why? Because of all the chances and opportunities, right? Stumbling upon really interesting people. When I lived in Brazil, I mean, my days were on the beach and didn't have much more than that, and I was truly happy, emotionally happy. I was achieving a lot professionally, no, not at all. But I do remember that when I was coming back on the plane, and I thought, well, if this falls, that's it, I'm good. I did a lot of things, I'm happy. I'll die happy. Of course, by then, I didn't have my children, my offspring. So now, in retrospective, there was still a lot of things that I wanted to do. But back then, I knew that I was truly happy. So again, if happiness, if you see it from a different angle, from what makes you, good, feel good, what makes you feel good, I think that it goes beyond living according to your principles, but I think that's truly important as well.
So I just want to make clear that Ayn Rand wouldn't negate the fact that it's an emotions involved, right? Happiness is something you feel, and emotions are important. She would just say that emotions are not arbitrary, right? Emotions come from somewhere. They come from your values. They come from your conclusions. They come from decisions you've already made. They're not random. And look, some people do have random chemical stuff going on in their minds that make it impossible for them to be happy. They could be, clinical depressed or schizophrenic or something like that. I don't think Ayn Rand denies all of that. She would say that rational achievement is consistent with emotions. That is, that your emotions respond to the hierarchy of values that you have created. And as we said, in different ages, in different periods of our lives, we have a different hierarchy of values. We choose different things. I don't think, I'm guessing, that if you went, backpacking right now, you might not be as happy as you were when you were 18 or something. Well, you've got kids. You've experienced a career. Well, yeah. Escape from them. So it's, I don't think they're in conflict, in other words. Yeah. I think they serve the same purpose. It's also true that Aristotle, said that you can only know you're really happy. You lived a happy life the moment before you die, because it's a cumulative thing, right? Now, I don't think that's quite true, but happiness is not joy or fun, although they contribute. Happiness is a cumulative, sense of the life that you're having. It's a state of being. Are you in a state of being that's happy? And I think that's something that you have to accumulate some experience and some life in order to be able to say, yeah, I really am happy.
Thank you so much. I think that one thing is clear from hearing all of your perspectives, that whether through reason or faith, our principles and our values end up shaping pretty much who we become and the way we go and move through life. Before moving on to the questions from the audience, I would like to call Miguel for a little announcement.
We have a little announcement. So on your seats, you have some flyers with a QR code. So that QR code leads you to a link for the Ayn Rand Conference we're going to host in Porto next year in April, from the 17th to the 19th. And you can sign up or apply for a scholarship and attend it for free. Okay, so that's possible as well. And I would like everyone to congratulate Marco Wayar for so basically there was an essay contest and he won it. So at the end, just come to the front and we'll give you the prize. Okay. And outside we have on a table as well some booklets about what is capitalism and about some ideas of objectivism, and you can grab them and take them with you. Okay, so that's good. So now, without further ado, we have questions. So if you guys want to ask questions to the panel, just raise your hand and I'll go with you and hand you the mic. There you go.
Hey, so my name's Philip. Hello. I'd like to pick up on the topic about religion, because I went through kind of the same experience as Yaron, not at 6 years old, a bit later, you know. But I was raised Catholic. I went to what do you call it, a nun school for 10 years or something. And, at the end of that, it all turned into not. But I have a question. Tim said that hope comes from faith, and even if there's outside circumstances that can make us not very happy, if we have hope, we can still be happy. So what if someone doesn't have faith? That's my question.
I'd say you can have rational hope. That is, there can be reasons in the world out there to believe that good things are coming, that it's not right now. I think irrational hope is irrational and can be very destructive. I think a lot of the problems in the world are people being passive and hoping things happen to them, rather than going and doing stuff to change their circumstances, to change the world in which you are. So you can be rationally hopeful based on evidence that good things can happen and good things will happen, or you can be irrational hopeful, which makes you very passive and can be very self-destructive.
Yeah. And it's exactly true. Like, also because you have faith doesn't mean that I don't have rationality. Like I always tell my learners that their parents are always telling them the world's about to end because there's going to be a third world war and it's this and it's that. And sometimes when I'm speaking to them, I'm wondering why should they be studying? Because the way their parents are telling them, that it's going to be this is going to do that and we're going to end. And I always tell them, rationally, you've got to think of this rationally. Like in my day, when I was your age, there was conflict in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. There was the Cold War. We had, this ozone layer that was like going to give us all cancer. My mom was putting cream and stuff on me. Like I couldn't just relax, We had Y2K problem, so that was going on. I had a friend who bought a BMW the day before Y2K because he said he wouldn't pay it the next day. He still had to pay it, the rationality. And he says, and if the world ends, I'm inside a BMW. But it didn't end, and he paid for it, So you look at those things, and, rationality gives me hope that because of those things. And then my son actually said something that gave me a lot of hope. When we were going on about all the, global warming and all that, definitely there's climate change. Like, you're not going to fight against climate change. But he also told me that I think we're being very arrogant that we think we're changing everything. Because he did in that time when we started Brave Generation Academy, we didn't have a curriculum. And that was the best, when we didn't have a curriculum. And he got to just do things that were interesting, and he did a extinction. And he came back and he says, Dad, there's been 6 extinctions, and we weren't here. And we weren't here. Man wasn't here. But things happened. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yep. So it gave me, again, rational hope that, we will, whatever happens, happens. What my faith and all that does for me is that maybe if I want to believe that in times when I don't have rational offers, I've got that to lean on. You understand what I'm saying? I was lucky I didn't go to a Catholic school because it seems like it's a tough thing, this.
I mean, mine was Jewish.
Yeah, I know, but all these religious ones seem really tough. Yeah. So it's also about balance in life. It's the equilibrium, bro. Like, you got to have balance. You can't be this, you can't be that. Also, if you do become something, you become so pushed on that it's no good. You're actually going to drive people away. You know what I'm saying? So you need balance. You need to think. And that's the problem. We're not made to think. We're not. In today's world, everything is about, I keep telling our learners, you got to think for yourself. Please don't fall into this thing. You've got to think. You've got to think. Be controversial and on thinking, and then come up with things. We're now doing these conundrums, which is similar to this. Like, we'll say, there's a rocket that flew past, or not a rocket, but a comet, and who gets to name it? The little girl who saw it in a room, the guy in the space station. who gets, and then you change it because you think, you start to think and you discuss it. And that should be education going forward. It's like discussions and
We spend
thinking.
way too much with young kids on emotion, and not enough. I mean, they're very good at emoting. They don't need our help with that. And yet so much of education today is about emotion and socialization and things like that, rather than about thinking.
Yeah.
I have another question, actually. So, in regards to values, some would say that we live in a postmodern society and the deconstruction of value and meaning. So, my question is, would you say that we are experiencing a society that has less values or more extreme values, in a way?
That's a very interesting question. So this would launch us into a very long discussion about the origins of postmodernism. But one of its philosophical roots is the idea that morals are relative. There's what we call relative moralism. So there are no universal values. Now, the idea of universal values and principles of human rights, that's a very liberal heritage. It's actually, it is an offspring of Kant's idea. And it is something that we used to accept in a very, as part of common sense, that there are universal values that we should strive for. We may not have achieved them yet, but we're making our ways. And some philosophers somehow created this idea that everything is relative. There is no morality. I don't know if somehow Nietzsche, which has nothing to do with those postmodernists, was somehow responsible for that when he said that we should go beyond good and evil, beyond morals, right? It is about the power and the capacity, the will to power to do stuff. That somehow opened the way or gave leeway to that kind of reasoning. But of course, the true responsibles for that were others, Foucault, Althusser. There were other philosophers that somehow created this moral relativism. And I think that it is our duty to return to normal and to establish that, yes, there are universal values that we should strive for. Yes, like John Locke said, when he helped, not he himself directly, found the United States, but he was the philosophical father of the United States, and when he said clearly that we hold these values and these truths to be self-evident, that all individuals have a life to a right, a natural right, a godlike right to life, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are universal values. There are many other universal values, and I think that it is our duty to make sure that they somehow are kept as an important heritage of our society.
So I think in modern times, I agree with that. I mean, I think that there's definitely an abandonment of the idea of universal values, particularly on the modern left and those influenced by postmodernism, but also on the modern right. There's the idea that universal values are out. The right replaces them with things like national values, racial values, tribal values, which is just as bad as what the left is doing, which is no values. So what we're seeing is the abandonment of universality, the abandonment of searching for those truths. I wish they were self-evident. It turns out they're not. I think in that sense Locke was wrong or Jefferson was wrong. But to them they were self-evident because they'd done all the thinking. They figured it out. It was so obvious to them, but most people don't do that. So I think today we live in a time of bad values, of wrong values, of evil values, and even people who claim they don't have any values, I mean, there's some like that, and that's nihilism. You see the nihilism. You see nihilism on the left and nihilism on the right politically today, which is they just want to see stuff burn. They don't care about anything. They just want to see stuff destroyed. They want to tear things down. They support the most horrible barbarians in the world. They hate civilization. that to me is nihilism. That to me is the negation of all human values. And the response is unfortunately, tribal and nationalistic and bad as well. So we're seeing more and more nihilism across the political spectrum.
Sorry, Tim, may I just add something else? Because I think you open here a venue for discussion that's really interesting, which is basically, I think that we should all be quite aware that ideas shape the world. And postmodernism is a good example of that, because it also influenced aesthetics. You were talking, and I was thinking about Fountainhead. And I was thinking about the ideological discussions that exist in aesthetics, in architecture, and the idea of beauty was heritage of the bourgeoisie, of the capitalist society. There is no beauty because there is no ugly. We are all equal. And the postmodernist currents of architecture follows precisely that idea that there is no beauty, does not exist. Actually, there was another, not line of thought, but another current in architecture that would renounce all of neoclassicism, which Ayn Rand tend to appreciate, along with Art Deco, right? If I'm not wrong.
She rejected neoclassical architecture in the modern world. I mean, it was great.
Yeah, back then.
At
Yeah,
its time.
exactly. Yeah.
But in the modern world, we have new materials, we have new techniques, we have new knowledge, we have new engineering. That the architecture should reflect all the new knowledge that we have.
Yeah, but my point was there was a current in architecture that would reject neoclassicism because Hitler enjoyed it a lot, right? So simply because someone that was terribly evil enjoyed that kind of architecture and thought to be an example, role model for what beautiful means in terms of aesthetics, then got rejected. And more importantly, this idea of something being beautiful, that would mean that it is beautiful in comparison to what? In comparison to something else that is not as beautiful, is ugly. But if we believe in egalitarianism, that everything is the same, therefore those concepts don't even apply. And they destroy those concepts. And so I think this proves the point that ideas definitely shape the world for the good and for the bad.
And actually, I think in aesthetics is the place where they first appear. So if you look at postmodernism, it first appears in painting and sculpture. I mean, you get the complete shattering of the idea of beauty, of the idea of representation, of the idea of anything. You get splashes of paint, and somehow that's art. That's so postmodernist. It's art because I feel like it's art, right? No skill required, no attention to detail, nothing projected, no ideas. Just somebody felt like splashing paint on a canvas.
The
or
banana hanging on the wall.
Or urinal hanging on the wall, which is, of course, famous. But it was a nihilistic statement. This was exactly the point of the urinal on the wall. It's to say anything is art if we feel like it's art. Anything is art if we say it's art. And that empties the concept completely. And if you look at the urinal on the wall, and you have Michelangelo's David next to it, they're not in the same category. They're not the same thing. Michelangelo's David is art. Urinal on the wall is not art. It's a urinal on the wall. That's all it is. But postmodernism shatters that. It says, no, you can't define anything. Anything is anything goes, whatever we feel like.
And that's the thing. I think if you don't have values, you'll follow anything. You'll believe in anything. That's the way you'll go. And if you do have values, you'll stand for something, and you'll, fight for something. And I think that's what makes me happy that I've got values, because sometimes I don't even understand how it's so easy to just throw everything out, destroy everything, and then still say that you care for everyone.
We have another question.
According to objectivism, the process of finding our own values, so the ultimate answer is that to get the values that are life-affirming seems a bit insufficient to me, and then also the process of emotions falling, the reasoning, conclusions, and then emotions follow from that. Because we cannot escape human genetics and brain chemistry. So, and we're born with that biologic knowledge that give us positive and negative emotions. So I don't agree that emotions follow the reasoning process as as it seems according to objectives, like maybe I'm wrong, but maybe it seems like it's a blank canvas, and then you do a reasoning process, and then can you define what you want, and then everything follows along.
Objectivism holds that you're not born with ideas. You're born with inclinations. You're born with certain abilities, and you know, at some level, certain, you know, connections in the brain that are different between human beings. There's no, I mean, my two kids were born, my two sons were born, and from second one, from the very moment they came out, you knew they were different, right? So there was something different about them. But it's not ideas. Ideas come from integrating facts and reality. There's nothing coded into our DNA that is an idea. Again, there's an inclination, there's potentials, there's things like that. You can see that emotions are consequences of conclusions all the time. You fall in love with somebody.
I was thinking about that.
And you're passionately in love with this woman, in my case, right? Passionately in love with this woman. And then you learn something about her character. She's a liar. And you fall in. Now, you might come to the conclusion, oh, she's a liar, she's not a good person. Your emotions might still be tugging you towards her. It might take a few days, weeks, months, to get over your attraction, your love to her. But it will if you've integrated the fact that she's a liar and she's not good for you. So your emotions will change based on your conclusion. You know, when I was little, a dog kind of attacked me. I think, who knows what he was intending. Maybe we just wanted to be nice. But you know, it created a fear of dogs. And until very late in life, I see a dog and it like I'm scared. Now, but you can change that. You can think about what caused it. You know, it's cognitive therapy or whatever. You can think about what caused it. You can think about, no, dogs are nice. I can go play with dogs and everything's fine. And then you get rid of that emotion, and the emotion just goes away. So your emotions are product. Now, not everything that we classify as an emotion is actually an emotion. You know, do we have the capacity to fear, like the flight? What is it? Flight. Flight. So. Yeah, that exists. But what causes us to be afraid is a consequence of conclusions that we come. You could take a baby and you can put it on a glass thing with just a steep thing, and the baby will just crawl right across it. And at some point, they learn they can fall, and that falling's not good. And suddenly they get to the edge, and they're afraid because they don't know what will happen, right? So they've learned. And based on that learning, fear is arised, and therefore they don't take certain action. And then they can learn, oh, there's glass here. I can walk on it. They walk on it. It's no problem. So we constantly, our emotions are changing based on our conclusions.
Can I just follow up? Because it's actually, the question is very interesting. It also perplexes me when I read through Rand's books, and we had the opportunity to discuss that on my podcast, Subscribe. It was a very interesting product placement. It was a very interesting discussion. But the point is, the way you framed falling in love, right? And you said basically you fall in love and then you find something you don't like, and slowly you start realizing that perhaps you were wrong, right? That your emotions don't follow your reasoning and you were not right. But if you do the exercise the other way around, right? Because according to Randian's line of thought, emotions follow reason. And let's try to apply that to falling in love, right? You do like a list of traits that the person should have, right? Should be that way, should feel that way, or look that way, be intelligent, beautiful, whatever, right? And you try to find people that match all the criteria. And imagine you can. And still, you may be unable to love those people that completely abide by the criteria that you rationally define. And on the other hand, you may just stumble upon someone that doesn't have half of the criteria that you previously defined, and then boom, suddenly there's something going on, call it chemistry, call it emotions, but you fall deeply in love with that person, that totally changes. Right? And then eventually you start rationalizing why you fell in love with that person, right? Sure. You start going through the list and see, oh, she has that trait.
Meet this, she doesn't meet that.
Right? So
I don't think it works that way.
It's hard to make it compatible.
Yeah, but Rand had a whole theory of romantic love. So she had a theory about this. So, and she understood this, right? And the characters in her books fall in love often very quickly, right? Sometimes slowly, but often very quickly. And her view is you don't fall in love with a list of qualities. And to make a list of qualities and go find somebody
It's a list of values. It's
is
a
a
list of values.
recipe for failure. You fall in love with somebody's what she called sense of life. You fall in love with somebody's approach to reality. You know, the way they handle themselves, the way they carry themselves, the way they respond to different things. You can watch somebody look at art and say, yeah, you know, there's something special about that. Art is, I think, brings that out in us. Aesthetics brings that out in us. So she completely understood this. I mean, so it is a conclusion, but what happens with emotions is we don't think usually, this person has this. Okay, I should fall in love with them. What happens is you fall in love with them, and because the emotion is automatic. It's based on your sense of life. It's based on your conclusions that you've come to. It's based on who you are and your character, and it's based on how you evaluate other people. But it's quick. It's automatic. It's not the thinking about this. It's like art. You don't go up to painting and go, okay, I like it, right? You look at it and go, I like this painting, and then you analyze why you like it.
Right.
Because the painting is appealing to something in you, your sense about existence, that is based on the conclusions you've come to in the past. So it's not random, it's not arbitrary. Your emotions are not arbitrary and random, they're based on, and sometimes we don't even know where our conclusions came from. And this is the whole point of psychotherapy, is Freud is right in the sense that some of our conclusions we make when we're very young, and we can't remember them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they are, and they're shaping us. So, part of the reasons, if that's a problem, part of the reasons to do therapy is to try to figure that out. So it's emotions are not, I think, I feel. That's not how it works. I feel, these feelings are based on conclusions of past. Now, sometimes when you discover something new about somebody, it feeds into that equation, and now you fall out in love. But it takes time because it has to be integrated into the system.
Yeah.
So can I just...
Yep.
Okay, you're listening. So I'm going to give a simple example. We are born social beings. We can, through a reasoning process, decide that if I lived alone, I could be better. I could accomplish more. But then I cannot live alone because my chemistry is very difficult for most people to change their emotions and their.
I think that's wrong. You've got a number of wrong premises there. You cannot live better living alone. Society is incredible value. Adam Smith showed us division of labor, specialization benefits you enormously. So when you're alone, you miss all those things. Your standard of living is lower. Your quality of life is lower. We gain enormously from friendship and love and human interaction. Rationally, we gain from other people all kinds of values. So when you live alone, you miss that. And that's not because it's chemical. It's because in reality, other people do things that benefit me. And I realize that, and I don't want to be alone because I want to be with other people and gain that benefit. Indeed, when in some societies you go out there and you find that people are not very nice and that you're not benefiting from them. And it's sad when you have to be alone because you want to escape them, because you are not benefiting from all those values that you could gain from other people. So it's not that we're born social, it's that we're a trading animal. We trade constantly, right? From the beginning of time, we were traders. And it's not only that we trade in material things, we trade in spiritual values constantly. So we're not a social being, we are a trading being, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we're constantly learning.
Yeah.
Constantly learning and adapting. I remember the first time I fell in love, I thought it was forever. I was like, 12 years old.
We all did.
She told me she loved me. I said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I thought, that's it. And then like 3 months later, she was dating my best friend. And then, the next one came and I'd learned a little bit. And she said, I love you. And I waited a little bit. I love you too. By the third one, when she said, I love you, I made like I didn't hear it. So I wouldn't have to say I love you. And, it took time until I found the right one that I really loved and said I loved and etc. But it's not ticking boxes. It's not, it's life. It's laughing. And you're going to make mistakes, but they're part of the learning curve.
Good afternoon. Thank you all. thank you also, Nuno, and the entire team for this opportunity, and greet our distinguished guests and Maria for this moderation. And I would like to ask you about going back to the values, and more in this specific way to the Christian values, let's say like this. I would like to give you an example of the past. And to give you a little context, this is about the capacity of pressure of the institutions, like in this way, the church institutions, to put pressure to conditionate good in positive or negative way in this world scenario. And for example, when Pope John Paul II, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher have joined together to solve between themselves the fight against the communism, the Catholic Church had power. And as we know in Portuguese context, the magistrature of influence to contribute to this battle. Do you think that nowadays the problem is right the opposition? And let me be more clear. Do you think that the absence of the capacity of the Catholic Church and the Christian values in general to put more pressure to solve the problems, this is about the crisis of the institutions or the crisis of the values? Thank you.
What does it say? Oh, the crisis of?
The values, in conclusion, to be more direct, if this is more about a crisis in general, in crisis of the institutions, or the crisis of the values in general. Thank you.
I mean, look, I have a very negative view of the Catholic Church and its role in history. I think it's been much more responsible for bad things than it has been for good things. John Paul II and his opposition to communism was one of the better things that happened. But, you know, at the end of the day, but after a long string of very, 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 very bad things that the Catholic Church was responsible for, including maybe even inventing communism. And I think to a large extent Karl Marx really secularizes Catholicism to a large extent. He gains his values from them. So, you know, the crisis ultimately is a crisis of values. You know, and as a consequence, you get a crisis of institutions. And certainly our institutions have failed. And you talk about the Catholic Church, I think it's always failed in a deep sense. But look at our universities. Look at our political institutions. You know, institution after institution after institution you're seeing is failing today. We've got real crises. You've got a crisis in Brussels. You've got a crisis with certain elements on the right rising and certain elements on the left rising. These are all crises of institutions, but what's the core? Where do institutions gain their values? They gain them from the values of individuals, and the real crisis is a crisis of values. The institutions are just reflecting that back to us. I mean, our universities are dominated by postmodernism. They have adopted those values, and now they're teaching crap to our, you know, to students as a consequence of that, and they're failing us. They're failing us as citizens, as parents, as individuals, as students. But I think it's across the board. Institutions have gone bad.
Well, if I can
She
just
had a
quickly add
question.
something. I think the dilemma.
No,
is
she was first.
I think we're facing another dilemma because, as Yaron said, our institutions represent our values, derive from our values. The values are building blocks of the institutions. They should represent those values as faithfully as possible. So when the institutions are failing, it's probably because something much meaningful is failing before, which is the values. And what we see right now at the world stage is that we are seeing a regress from the idea of, and you mentioned that, of power through influence, right? What in the international relations they call the soft power, right? It's not hard power. In the past, we would wage war if we wanted to get our voices heard. We'd just invade countries, kill people, and that was it. That's how things work. The stronger would prevail. Now, since at least Second World War, things have shifted. The idea of the international liberal order rests on this idea that power can be exerted in different ways, including through influence, through soft power. What we are seeing now, at least in the last couple of years, is we are regressing to this idea that power is done through capacity, which is a very Nietzschean idea of the will to power, of getting things done through your own way. And so now you have blocks, world blocks, that try to gain as much power as possible. And by power here, I mean not only economic power, but also military might, military power, and use that to do whatever is in their best interest, because in the end, that's what nations do. They do what is in their best interest. And so that's what we're facing right now, and that's not only an issue with the left wing, that also comes from the right wing. We have a lot of people on the right wing, most extreme, more to the right, that defend this idea that in the end is the stronger that should reign somehow and should decide what works and what doesn't. And of course, Trump is also a part of that equation, is also responsible for this idea. He truly believes in that. He truly believes that the mightier should decide how things work and the others should abide. And I think that definitely puts not only our institutions in a very sensible situation, but it's deeply changing our values as well, because now we see people agreeing with this state of affairs, with this idea that yes, the strong should decide whatever works and should prevail, and that's the way it is, just accept it. And that's not, definitely it's not a good thing.
Hello, so my name is Salome, and at the start of this session, it was said that we all are influenced by philosophers, even if we are not aware of that. And I'll bring a controversial topic, which is the similarities between nihilism and objectivism, because nihilism was, as Nietzsche is unfortunately misquoted, presented as the lack of values. However, either in God is Dead book, but especially in Those Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche explores the importance of values to face existentialism. Even created the famous Ubermensch, Superman, concept. How far away can that be from the work of Ayn Rand that comes after Nietzsche, on the heroes she created in their books to show the rational man and the importance of values and exploration of those values?
So Rand it rejects Nietzsche, and you know she views Nietzsche as one of the bad guys in the history of philosophy, because you're right, Nietzsche in the end you know creates a separate category of certain men, right? Ubermensch who go beyond, right? Who are above conventional morality.
Or immoral.
Yeah.
Immoral.
But Rand says, and for Nietzsche, everything is about the will. Nietzsche has no place for reason. Reason does not play a big role in Nietzsche. And for Rand, of course, all our values should come from reason. There's nothing nihilistic about Rand. She's about building, creating, valuing, but making sure that the values, the things we are creating, are based on reason, based on rational thought, that our values are values that are connected to our life, connected to our need to thrive and flourish and survive. So while there is a certain aesthetic and emotional similarity between Rand and Nietzsche, there is none when it comes to the basic philosophy. They both reject Christianity. They both reject God. They both reject the values of the Christian values. But Ayn Rand actually offers something to replace them, something solid, grounded in the nature of man, whereas Nietzsche fails to do that.
We have a question from the audience online, 2 questions actually. One for Tim, asking if Tim can share how philosophy helped him achieve his goals, be successful in life. You know, he said that he tried a lot of companies, and some failed and some others succeeded. So if you can share your experiences and what's your way of thinking, your approach, how you deal with
Yeah, I think what it did is it helped me think. It helped me become more open-minded. You know, I'll post a verse from the Bible like I'll post Rand. I can get the best out of both worlds. You know how lucky I am. You can't do that.
Nope.
You see? So, open-mindedness. And in this world today, being open-minded is a superpower. Okay? And that's the thing. I get to look and think and take some ideas and understand what those mean to me. And it's personal, and you know, I don't push them onto others. It is what it is. So I think that's what's helped me a lot. You know, like today, if I get a LinkedIn message and it's a funny name and all that, I will look at it, I will think about it, I'll say, how do I answer it? Because I've come across so many times that I've answered a funny name and it's become a friend or it's been value. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I've got other friends who will never answer anything from that side or that side. You know, I've got friends on both sides. I'm one of the lucky ones, or blessed ones. Okay? So that's it. I think that's what it does. And I think, you know, for me, when, you know, Marcus Aurelius and things like that, because there's values, there's strength, there's belief, you know what I'm saying? It makes me stronger when I read it. Why not? I don't have to only read the Bible. I can, you know, read other things that make me strong as well. So I think that's my answer there, you know. So, and sometimes I even like to not read anyone, and I just want to be bored and think, because that's also underrated, you know.
Thank you so much for your answer. We have another question specifically for Mario here. Philosophy and complex ideas are becoming more and more absent from public discourse, especially in public policy, in exchange for more purely utilitarian approaches or very simplified ideological slogans. What do you think is the impact of this for the long term in our societies, and how can we make ideas great again?
So that's actually a very good question, and I fully agree. In most public policy decisions, the typical approach framework for deciding the venue, the way we should go, is how can we maximize the welfare? That's actually the economical approach, right? We try to maximize the welfare of the consumers, of the producers, of the society. That's a very utilitarian approach. And actually, some liberal thinkings had some responsibility on that. Not only John Stuart Mill, but Bentham as well. They were the ones responsible for this idea of utilitarianism. Now, I think it does have some merits in some circumstances. So we should not throw the baby with the water. I think that it is a framework for, in certain circumstances, you need to allocate a budget, right? You need to decide where the money goes. That's as good as any other approach for deciding what to do in terms of public policy. Now, where I think this does not serve us well is when our positions of principle are put into questions in other types of decisions that we need to make. In that case, it can be utilitarian, right? Let's not do, because otherwise, that opens the way for trying to decide the thing that will please most people, so that then you can get votes. So it does have a bad consequence. If you then decide on whatever will most people like, and therefore that will be good for me, because I'm a politician, I need to get elected, so I want people to be happy, then we will have a big issue, because we won't make the right decisions, but the decisions that more people think are right. And not all the times those decisions or those positions juxtapose, right? Sometimes it is not the collective decision, or the majority decision is not the best decision. No. And therefore, in those circumstances, we should definitely stick to our values, to our positions of principle, and use that to decide. So, I mean, just to wrap up, I would say that I think there's place for both. but in some important issues, we should definitely stick with positions of principle, prima facie, and avoid utilitarian approaches.
Let me just add something. I don't think it's the job of politicians to make ideas great again. It's not
Yeah.
their job, and
Politicians follow ideas.
and
We
they are
follow
too
that.
sensitive to the voters. I mean, they need to get elected. I think it's the responsibility of the intellectuals, primarily, and the responsibility ultimately of the people to make ideas great again. Politicians, in the end, we get the politicians we deserve. And we do. We you know, the culture, it moves in a particular direction, and the politicians move with it. It's rare that a politician leads us into a new frontier. I don't know that that's ever happened. Maybe Thatcher in England, maybe. Usually there's a lot of intellectual groundwork that goes into a new political figure coming in and reshaping things. But it's that intellectual groundwork that needs to happen in order to make ideas great again. You can't expect politicians out of nowhere to suddenly become principled and in our case, pro-free markets or whatever. It's not going to happen until the intellectual landscape changes dramatically.
And they should be executing and judged on that.
Yeah.
Because they don't execute. There's no KPIs, there's no nothing. You mentioned Thatcher. I received a prize where I got this big painting of Thatcher. Train to this university. And then I had to come back on the train and I was carrying Thatcher.
Uh-oh.
And then I decided I'm going to carry it that everybody can see.
Yeah.
Wow. There was comments, good
Sure.
and bad,
I'm sure.
but there were comments.
Yep.
And
That
I
was
thought
in
that
the
was
UK?
amazing.
In the
yeah,
UK.
And I thought that was amazing. I thought at least
no,
she stood
everybody
by
has
her
an opinion
principles.
about her.
She
Absolutely.
stood by her principles. She lived by her principles. I think she wasn't maybe happy, but she was joyful in making those things happen more than, you know. So I think it was amazing to see that. And how many people can we say that about today's world?
Very few. Zero.
True.
There's another.
Javier Milei.
There's another online question. If happiness is represented differently for everyone and even varies for each person throughout life, how can we define the criteria, and is it even possible?
No, I don't think happiness is impossible. I think happiness is attainable. It is a consequence of achieving your life-affirming rational values. When you achieve life-affirming rational values and you achieve them and you build on that and you recognize that fact that you've achieved them and you're constantly building towards greater and greater life-affirming rational values, you will achieve happiness. I think when you achieve values that are not life-affirming or when you when they're not rational, I think that's when you falter from happiness. But again, there's huge optionality, right? We can, you know, all of us are going to have different values, but in terms of the concretes, but they all have to fall into this broader category of rational and life-affirming.
Yeah, and maybe the word happiness is the wrong word. I think maybe replace it with content. You know, sometimes we should be content with all we had, where we are, where we're going. And happiness, it's very short-lived.
No, I
That's
think
why it's called.
I actually think happiness is long-lived, and it's ambitious, and you should be ambitious in
That's
life.
why it's called a happy ending.
We have time for one more question if anyone wants to ask our panel. Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Oh man.
Hi, Tim. How do you how do you approach teaching philosophy at Brave Generation Academy to kids?
Yeah. You know what we do is we actually teach them more thinking. And then they will start finding things. They find such amazing books and they start following people. You know, we can't do it all, you know, but we can definitely get them onto paths and let them go. And our path is a weird path. You know, like people think BJA is like, you know, you go like this. You don't. You go like this. And if you're hanging there, but then you start finding your path. You understand? And everybody today wants a road, like it's that way. You understand what I'm saying? And it's not. It's not. And because we all want that road, we you know, unhappy or we're uncontent and we've got issues and then we, you know, the only thing I can say about BJ, what we try to do is we try not to work so much on the learner, on the young person. We try to change a system that then allows them to work for themselves. Okay, and that's a problem, is that we focus a lot on people at the moment, like you're unhappy because of this, you're unhappy. But sometimes if we focus on the system, they'll sort themselves out, you know, so that's what we try to do. Okay.
And I think most of education should be about thinking. You know, philosophy as a topic is, I don't think you can teach it to anybody under 16, right? I mean, as a topic, because it requires real conceptual thinking. And that conceptual ability doesn't really develop until your late teens. So if you teach people how to think properly, then once they encounter philosophy later in life, or you know, in their late teens or early 20s, then they'll be able to engage with it. The challenge is that our educational institutions don't teach how to think. They don't teach the skill of thinking.
Yeah. And we do push them into experiences, because experiences make you think. How do you do this? What do you meet people, you hear opinions, you know, and we're in a world now where you actually need to maybe ask questions, not answer them. You know, but no one's thinking of how to teach kids how to answer the right question, ask the right questions. We keep telling them and grading them on how they answer a question. That you could, on your phone, you could get everything right. But that's how we say they're clever and they've got a future, you know. But yeah, and it's hard, eh? It's very hard, because there's this, like, education at the moment is so far behind society and behind our needs. And you know, and it needs everyone to get involved. It needs parents, it needs the community, it needs businesses, it needs everyone to start asking, you know, that there needs to be a change. Because otherwise we're just going to keep getting the same thing. We get the same thing, we get the same votes, we get the same votes, we get the government we deserve. And it's a cycle, you know. So until we start breaking this, it's it should be mission critical. It really should be mission critical.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We're going to end on this note, in a very positive note. Don't forget, you have the flyers with a QR code. You can scan them and apply for a scholarship at Ayn Rand Institute. And thank you so much, the panel, for being here. Mario, Tim, Yaron, thank you so much. Maria Francisca, thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was lovely. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Mario. That was nice, huh?
Yaron.